Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk about the best recordings of Sibelius's First Symphony. Now, I'm a little bit torn about this work because I have to be honest, I don't think it's played all that well anymore. I'm not sure what happened, but it doesn't seem to excite conductors the way it used to. And the conductors who did it best were the ones who were very good at the other composers that it resembles, specifically Tchaikovsky for the most part. But, and Tchaikovsky is really out of fashion now too, especially among today's sort of the period instrument influenced, low vibrato, low expression, neoclassical, cool, collected style of conducting, which is most everybody. I mean, it's a lot of people. And it's a real problem because this is a piece that's full of romantic passion with surging melodies, and you have to ham it up a little. It's okay. It's okay to ham it up a little. The problem used to be, decades ago, that people hammed it up to excess. It was too much in that direction. But now the pendulum has swung the other way, and it seems that Sibelius's First is one of those pieces that falls in the cracks. It's neither fish nor fowl, but I love this work. I like it better than the second. I really do. And not just because it gives me, as a utility percussionist, as they called us in the day, a lot to do. It doesn't actually give us a lot to do, but it gives us things to do. There's bass, drum, cymbals, and triangle in it, which is wonderful. And like the second symphony, too, it has a timpani part that's a monster, especially in the first movement. It's just glorious. It's a standard test piece for orchestral timpanists to be able to play the Sibelius First, because it's just a huge part, and you're playing double rolls and chords and all kinds of crazy stuff all the time. And Sibelius's writing for the timpani is really, really quite extraordinary. I mean, nobody writes for timpani like Sibelius does. He doubles the melody with the drums, so you can hear it right away in the first theme of the first symphony, when the timpani are going bum boom bum 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 ba ba bum, and it's all doubled by the timpani. It's wonderful. So anyway, I mean, so much for being a timpanist. But the fact of the matter is that the best recordings, in my view, of the Sibelius First are almost all, not entirely, but almost all older recordings by the certified Sibelians of the 60s and 70s, because the ones that are coming out now, they're better these guys are better at later Sibelius, the sort of cooler neoclassical Sibelius, but this early, passionate, exciting, romantic, red-blooded, meaty Sibelius, they just don't do that well. There's something also very interesting about the Sibelius First, which has to do with the influence question, the sequels, and that's this. Sibelius was a huge fan of Bruckner. He was blown away by Bruckner's Third Symphony, and you can hear something of that, in Kullervo particularly. It sort of shows the influence of Bruckner's Third, and Sibelius, was in the audience when the revised version of Bruckner's Third was first performed. He was in Vienna studying at the time, and we don't really know how much Bruckner, I think, he studied. He's mentioned, he talks about the Third, he talks about the Fifth, he talks about a bunch of Bruckner symphonies in his letters, but the one that really intrigues me, and it's because it's very little known even among Bruckner fans, is the second. Because the opening of the Second Symphony and the opening of the Allegro of Sibelius's First sound an awful lot like one sort of got the idea from the other. I'm going to play them for you, and you can decide for yourself. Here's the Bruckner. And here's the Sibelius. You tell me. I mean, I don't know. That's just something I noticed. You can draw your own conclusions. But let's get to the recordings and see where they take us, shall we? The first that I recommend, because I think it's very good, I've got about 10 of them here, I think, which is a goodly number. But as you'll see, they're mostly sort of certified Sibelius ones, and most of them come in complete cycles, because singleton performances of the first are quite rare, although there are a couple we'll talk about. Loren Maazel and the Vienna Philharmonic. I mean, it's wonderful to hear the Vienna Philharmonic in this piece, with the horns blasting, blowing away the rest of the woodwind section. And also in this cycle, Loren Maazel hadn't quite become as slow and weird as he became in his Pittsburgh Sibelius Cycle, which we will have an opportunity to talk about, or at least bits of it, at future Sibelius Symphony chats. But for this one, this is a very good first. It's exciting, it's brilliant, it's wonderfully played, and very, very nicely recorded. And it's vintage Vienna Philharmonic sound, which is just, we don't get to hear them do Sibelius now. There, of course, is a Sibelius First with Vienna that Bernstein did, and I saw them do it live. And it's slow and heavy, and I could have accepted it. And we're going to come back to Bernstein in a minute, but we might as well talk about it now while we're talking about the Vienna Phil. I could have dealt with Bernstein's Vienna Phil recording had it been better recorded. But sonically, it's weird. It's very, very dry, incredibly dry. So dry that the horns sound like they're playing stopped tones all the way through. I mean, it's that dry and unpleasant, I think. And beyond that, Bernstein tinkered with the score a little. In the second movement, he added a few, bass drum rolls and whacks, at the big that business and the big climax in the second movement. Well, there is no bass drum part, but when Bernstein played it with the Vienna Philharmonic, voila, it appeared. But beyond that, that's a dud of a performance, and so I'm not going to deal with it any further. Bernstein on DG, you could forget. If you want to hear the Vienna Philharmonic play Sibelius I in prime Sibelius I form, as well as Vienna Philharmonic form, then you have to hear Loren Maazel do it. Next, we get Colin Davis and the Boston Symphony. Now, this is not my favorite performance of the first as an interpretation. I think it's a little bit too magisterial, shall we say. I mean, Colin Davis was never a great Tchaikovsky conductor. And really, that's what you need here. You need that romantic impulsiveness. This is more sort of grand, stately, noble, if you want to call it. The music needs to have more dirt and more sex in it than Colin Davis invests it with. But, and here's the but, the Boston Symphony is magnificent. And more to the point, its timpanist was Vic Firth. Vic Firth was a legend among timpanists, the greatest timpanist probably who ever lived, along with the Berlin Philharmonic's, Werner Taric. He was another legend among timpanists. But I mean, Vic Firth, invented modern timpani technique. His company makes 12 million drumsticks a year. He passed away, a decade or two ago. But he was the Boston Symphony's principal timpanist from, I think the dates were, they hired him, Charles Munch hired him in 1952, and I think he retired in like 2005 or something like that. It was just an unbelievable career. Brilliant musician. And to hear him play these Sibelius symphonies in this Colin Davis cycle is worth the price of the record, because the timpani parts are so important at all dynamic levels. And, Firth had custom-made sticks to do all these pieces, and he was amazing. And in the first symphony, he's just colossal. It's fabulous. You listen to him there, and in the coda to the first movement of the fifth symphony, you can actually hear what Sibelius wrote, and it's fantastic. When we talk about Sibelius's fifth, we'll come back to that performance. But aside from that, I mean, the playing is very beautiful. There's nothing wrong with Davis's interpretation. I think it could just have a little bit more fire and passion to it, but it's very, very beautiful. And every so often I haul it out and I enjoy it as sort of an alternative view of the symphony that's quite legitimate. But there's no At least he's not one of these ice-cold whack job conductors, of whom there seem to be so many. Another wonderful, and this is a singleton performance, Stachowski, our good old Leopold on Sony. It's in the Sony Leopold box, and it was also available separately. But this is remarkable, first of all, because he doesn't mess with the piece. He really doesn't. He doesn't futz around with it too much. He just plays it. He plays it straight, and he plays it very well. And it's exciting, and it's powerful. And, Stachowski was a dyed-in-the-wool romantic and a major Tchaikovsky guy. Oh, boy, did he mess with Tchaikovsky. Oh, my God. Someday we have to do a talk just on Stachowski's way with Tchaikovsky. Holy cow. But it's a very fine Sibelius First. And just fresh and incredibly youthful, considering that he was about 375 when he made that recording. So good for him. A very fine Sibelius First. Now, here's one that may surprise you. It surprised me. It's a shocker. Karajan, his digital one. He only did the symphony once. And this is the one. It was a late Karajan, early EMI digital recording. And those EMI digitals with the Berlin Philharmonic were strange sounding. Oh my, the sound was so odd because you had not only early digital technology, but you had Karajan tinkering with everything, But here's another one where good old Werner Taric, oh, you've got to hear him play this piece. Holy cow, it's a timpani concerto. But that's not why I like it. The reason I like it is, it's one of the reasons I like it. The reason I really like this is because it's totally unexpected for Karajan. His late Sibelius was ferocious. And it doesn't sound anything like, that overly blended, warm, smushy Berlin Phil. I mean, this is raw. And in the finale, my God, it's primal. It's absolutely primal. They just go nuts on the piece. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't. It's fast. It's exciting. It's powerful. The brass are going nuts. It's so not Karajan. He also did the best Finlandia, by the way. Something to keep in mind for a future time also. But this Sibelius one with Karajan in Berlin on EMI is spectacular and shocking. But like I said, the recording is kind of odd. I mean, the balances are, it's a little weird from a sonic point of view, but I don't care. I mean, it's really, really a shocker if you think you know what Karajan sounds like and dislike that sonic patina he spread over everything, and I kind of do dislike it, especially in classical period stuff. Wow, he nails Sibelius 1. But it's not surprising in the sense that he was a great Tchaikovsky conductor. So there you go. That's the nexus that you were looking for when you want to get a great Sibelius First. Next, another great Tchaikovsky conductor who does a great Sibelius First was Ormandy. And in this Ormandy Conducts Sibelius box, you get both of him, his Sony and his RCA. And they're both very good. They're both very good. The RCA one is a little bit more edgy and raw. That Sony one, though, is the one to get. The earlier one was from, it says here, 62. Wow. The 62 recording, it is the most luscious, voluptuous, yummy, gorgeous. I mean, first of all, the harp is mic'd separately. Did you know the First Symphony has a harp? I mean, it does. Occasionally you hear it tinkling on the top. No. It's going wong, 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 throughout the melody in the finale. It's fantastic. In fact, he likes the harp so much that he actually reorchestrates the final chords of the symphony so that you get harps going thwong, thwong. Oh, it's great. It's fantastic. Ormandy's Sony Sibelius First is just, it's a completely unique, it's the one Stachowski should have done but didn't. That's what it is. It's amazing. It's just amazing. It is fabulous. And it's not voluptuous at the expense of movement. It's not a terribly slow performance. It's just so gorgeous. Oh my God. And the remake is much, much edgier and less, you don't hear all of that harp stuff and, some of that romantic excess has been trimmed, shall we say. But it's still an excellent performance by any standard. Again, the sonics are actually better in the earlier one than in the later one. But, Ormandy was a fantastic Sibelius conductor, and we're going to talk about more of his performances too as time passes, because they're wonderful. A vintage Sibelian who you've got to have a performance by is Berglund. Now, Berglund did this symphony, did Sibelius cycles. He made at least 3 of them. And this is the first with the Bournemouth Symphony. And it's the best. It really is. It's the best for its combination of clarity of detail with that sort of primal, raw, edgy sound that you want your Sibelius to have, especially these early works, these romantic works. Berglund became increasingly refined. And his last Sibelius cycle, which was like, what was it, the Chamber Orchestra of Europe, I think, was complete. He even admitted it. He just said, I just want to hear everything there is to hear. He wanted total textural transparency at the expense of emotional expression. And that was his stated preference. And I applaud him for being honest about it. But if you really want to hear a great Sibelius one that has the right balance, then Berglund in Bournemouth is the way to go. It's a beautiful performance. And just because that orchestra was maybe not as polished as some of the later ensembles he worked with, the Helsinki Phil or Chamber Orchestra of Europe, it works in this music. It works because you can be unpolished without being sloppy. They're never sloppy. They just have an edge to their sound, and that gives it a certain spontaneous intensity that's wonderful, and that marries very well to Berglund's natural sense of proportion and quest for clarity of outline. So go for Berglund. Oh, we're coming to the end. Another great Sibelius one, Bernstein's first one with the New York Philharmonic. Again, a great Tchaikovsky conductor. He does a great Sibelius one. He hits all the big tunes. This is impulsive, and it's exciting, and it's spontaneous, and it's everything you want in Sibelius one, which is a complete contrast to that, dry sounding sludge fest he later did in Vienna, which you have to ignore. Run away, run away, run away, as they said on Monty Python, right? But this first is first rate. Absolutely first rate, exciting, and very well recorded. It sounds terrific. This is the French Sony issue, but you can find it. It was in Bernstein Century and Bernstein Weekend and, Bernstein Decade and Bernstein Semi-Annual and all of those reissue series. So first class, absolutely first class. But I want to end, you saw, most of these were recordings by older conductors in Sibelius cycles. And it was that generation of genuinely good romantic conductors. That's what they did. And they did it very well. And Sibelius's one belongs in that general category of work. But there are 2 more recent ones. Yes, I have 2, which I think are completely fabulous and deserve your strongest attention. One is Segerstam on Ondine with the Helsinki Philharmonic, absolutely first class. And Segerstam is one of those, he's a romantic guy. He was a violinist by trade. He writes weird avant-garde music in his spare time. He's, shall we say, slightly self-absorbed, but not necessarily in a bad way. Full of fun and character, and he cares about what the strings sound like and what they do, and he always makes sure they sound beautiful. And this is a symphony that lives or dies on its strings and timpani, and, but the fact of the matter is that he does it first class, Sibelius one. This is, again, it's spontaneous and romantic, and he plays with a little rubato in the melodies here. It's bum ba da 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 da, bum ba da. He'll linger a little, but not to excess. It's not perverse. It's just expressive. God damn it, why can't they be expressive in this music anymore? Segerstam is expressive, and beautifully so. However, we have to pick one. I'm going to pick one, and I think you'll probably agree with my choice in a lot of respects. And that's Blomstedt in San Francisco as part of his Sibelius cycle, which is one of the great Sibelius cycles, like his great Nielsen cycles, cycle. He does Scandinavian music fabulously. Maybe it's because he's Scandinavian. I don't know. But it's a wonderful cycle from first note to last. There are no bad performances in it. And the first is just beautifully poised, passionate where it needs to be passionate, forward-moving, propulsive, colorful, wonderfully recorded. I mean, it has everything. It really does have everything. And so if you're looking for the best sounding modern recordings, I go for both. I really do. Segerstam on Undine and Blomstedt on Decca. Those are the ways to go for modern recordings of Sibelius I. But all of these other ones that I've discussed are superb. Now, you may wonder what happened to like Osmo Venska. Well, his first one with the Lati Symphony is very good. It's a good performance, but that orchestra is a little bit undersized for the work. It's really a large chamber orchestra, and they're much better in the later symphonies than I think they are in the first two, in that first cycle he did on Bis. But it's a very good performance. His Minnesota recordings, I think, are just grotesque. They're micromanaged, they're played with and futzed around to no expressive purpose that I can hear. I mean, he just does things because he can, and he messes with stuff constantly, and he's tinkering here and there, and he's sucked all the spontaneity out of the music, all of its youthful fire and passion, and I don't know what in God's name he was thinking when he did that Minnesota Sibelius cycle. It is awful. So I do not recommend Osmo Venska in the First Symphony. And like I said, there are a whole bunch of later Sibelius cycles and people who've done them. There are other good performances, but these are the ones that stand out for me. And as I've said, they belong to conductors who are good romantic music conductors, because Sibelius First is very good romantic music. So that's the story. Keep on listening, folks. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Take care.